essentially, sometimes you're just looking for anything to watch that you haven't really got to concentrate on. And I watched all of The Sopranos. I've done that now, and now I've almost done the entirety of Game of Thrones as well.
Right, don't want to get into Mad Men. Have you watched the whole of Mad Men?
So I watched Mad Men, and I got about 3 seasons in, and I got a little bit bored.
Pick it up again.
But this is the thing. Crucially, I need to be watching shit that either I don't have to concentrate on or that I've seen before.
Well, it's very relaxing. Like, it's very ASMR. Like, nothing really happens. So that when something big, it's just, Don Draper smashing up his personal life and shouting at people at work. Really, it's nothing. It's not really.
Well, I get that at home.
To get worried about.
My wife actually really loves Mad Men. When we talk about like our favourite shows ever, my holy triumvirate would be Sopranos, The Wire, and Breaking Bad. The wife I have access to would have Mad Men up in there. She doesn't like that into The Wire, but she loves Mad Men. So I should at some point I should get stuck in. I just found that I think the reason I lost interest in it, and this is potentially a couple of controversial opinions here, but I do sincerely hold them. So if you want to get in touch and take me to task, then please do. Although I like January Jones, I don't think she's that good an actor. And I also found that there weren't enough likeable characters in Mad Men. It kind of turned me off a bit. So here's what I mean, without getting too beardy about it. Like,
who are the redeemable characters in Breaking Bad?
Well, that's what I'm going to say. So what the skill of, say, a Tony Soprano, the writing of a Tony Soprano, or the writing of a Jesse Pinkman, is they're capable of doing incredibly awful things, but yet you still kind of pull for them.
Right.
Like they're at proper anti-hero kind of energy to them. So Jesse Pinkman, who is essentially, is a serial murderer, drug dealer, etc., does these amazing, horrible things. But it's so carefully written and so brilliantly performed by Aaron Paul. There's a vulnerability there that means you find yourself liking him, or I did anyway. And with Tony Soprano, it's the same. Like, what David Chase does is he drops things in where it seduces you into having opinions that in real life you would never have. Like, you would never defend a guy who does what Tony Soprano does by saying things like, "Oh yeah, but he never hits his kids or his wife."
Right.
But Tony, it's a big key plot point of Tony Soprano's character that while all the other mafioso around him are like abusive people, he is arguably, obviously, emotionally manipulative, but he never strikes his family. Like, there's a big plot point where he hits AJ once, and it kind of dogs him for a long time, and it's a really big thing. And so, but at the same time, obviously, in real life, that's like, well, so fucking what? You shouldn't be doing that anyway. But it's the beautiful part of how Gandolfini plays Soprano, and how David Chase, or whoever it was who was writing the specific episodes, writes him, that you'll find kind of pulling for him. And I found like Don Draper as a character just kind of turns me off a bit. I don't really care about him.
But he's a man who obviously very gifted and people respect him, but his private life just keeps on getting in the way. And the reasons why you pull from him is because it's a company that is trying to grow, where there are bigger players, and these. I understand the idea of I mean, all of these men are toxic men to varying degrees. They're all awful men anyway, but like his kind of elevation of certain women. He's not fucking in his business is interesting. I think the refreshing nature he approaches
he's got a bit more
race
depth,
and stuff like that. So yeah, it's and also it's just there's a lovely scene that I always hark back to when they are having a family picnic. Oh, January Jones and Don Draper and that they're having a family picnic, and they've got a lot of like disposable plastic. And at the end of the picnic, they just pull back the picnic blanket and fuck off, and just leave all the trash on the floor. Because that was that, and you sort of go, "Oh shit, yeah, people used to do that."
That's
didn't
what
they?
people were like.
Yeah. People were like that then. So there's enough around him, and there's enough interesting characters who are also shitting where they eat. That makes it really interesting, and it's it's just perfect.
I'm not for 1 second trying to denigrate it or say that it's not good. Loads of people whose opinion I massively respect love it, so it's obviously a disconnect with me, and I think that's a fair comment by you. But when I did my masters, I wrote my dissertation on 20th and 21st century masculinity in the United States, and so stuff like Don Draper would be a really interesting. I didn't actually cover Don Draper, but it'd be a very interesting case study, because what a lot of the gender stuff around masculinity stuff and gender theory about men in the late 20th century is about how they find a role for themselves in the post-World War II environment. So where they go from what people would talk about, this is all very beardy, but very briefly, what kind of academics talk about is the idea that men post-1945 in the US went from a role of what they call utility, i.e. being really important, having a great utility in terms of how they work, how they fight a war and all the rest of it, to one of what they call an ornamental position where all the manufacturing jobs, all the kind of traditional male roles started to disappear, and there was no real important role, or not as important a role for men in the latter 20th century and the 21st century in a post-war environment for those reasons. And then you start to talk about how they claimed that back. So the idea about Don Draper being what he is and how you kind of articulately describe him is interesting, because ultimately you could argue he's trying to find some way of reclaiming his masculinity, and he's doing it by fucking loads of women and trying to accentuate his business, trying to be successful, trying to get money. And it's true across the board. Like, Walter White would be the same. Walter White's an emasculated character at the start of Breaking Bad, and he goes to criminal means to try and reclaim his masculinity. And it's the same in, say, season 2 of The Wire, when the doc's working is disappearing and people have no place in the world, so they try and claim their masculinity back by hard drinking and womanizing and showing how tough they are physically, all that kind of stuff. So all this golden age of TV thing that we're witnessing and experiencing now, all really the big players, the big shows, they all come from that kind of idea. And Tony Soprano is obviously the same as well, because he's.
I watched it. I watched the film with the guy who is the lawyer in Better Call Saul. I forget that actor's name.
Bob Odenkirk.
Bob Odenkirk. There was basically, like a lot of films from, like, there's like kind of a resurgence of like 80s kind of action films at the moment, just simply because we all remember them, it's comfortable, it's nostalgia. But all of those 80s films were male, aging male wank fantasies, basically. Emasculated male trying to sort of go, Top Gun. And Bob Odenkirk does a film, I forget what it's called now, but it's like, he's like an invisible man who used to be this hardcore FBI hand-to-hand combat specialist and stuff. Yeah. And I think it was made by the John Wick guy. And he doesn't really work, because Bob Odenkirk doesn't necessarily look like he's Is
this this action movie that he put out fairly recently?
Yeah. It was just before his Nobody. It was just before his heart attack, I think. And
that's right.
It's just. I mean, it is atrocious. Like, it was a fun watch, but it was all just like.
Why has he done it then, do you think?
Well, I mean, it's something different, I suppose, isn't it? Like, you sort of, I guess, if you're an actor that does that sort of thing, I think having a little action movie is a nice little curio, isn't it? But I think it was so, overtly a 50-year-old man male wank fantasy. Like, my dad would love that film, because this guy's just taking control.
Do you think
of his
about your
life
dad's wank fantasies a lot?
Thinking about my dad's wank fantasies, and God knows what they are. God knows. But yeah,
Bob Odenkirk, surprising.
Bob Odenkirk, it's a lot of Breaking Bad memes.
Yeah, but you know what? A lot of people think, this is getting a bit nerdy now, based on what I just said earlier. But a lot of theorists would hypothesize that the rise in, like, what they call those hard body action movies of the 80s. Was America via Hollywood's attempt to reclaim America's dominance in the world after Vietnam. The fact that the US reputation on the global stage was really poor, and they looked emasculated as a nation. They looked like the defeated and on their knees. And
but has there ever been a financial link between the US government and these TV? Like,
because Hollywood was completely co-opted for propaganda purposes during all the things like Second World War and all that kind of stuff. Hollywood's always been, certain studios have worked hand in glove with the US to try and advance the US's interests overseas. I mean, John Ford, I think, was the big director who did a load of American propaganda stuff for World War II, and so it is they are intertwined for sure. And it's not just that. It isn't necessarily about the government. It's about the things that, like, say, a director of a big action movie in the 80s. I mean, look at Rambo, for example. Rambo's a great example. Like, look at what Sylvester Stallone looks like. He's like a proper embodiment of like a tough American man, and all those kind of movies. Top Gun's a really good example as well. Like, a lot of people say there's like a really homosexual subtext to Top Gun.
Yeah,
as well.
I mean, yeah.
But I don't really know how that manifests. I know how it manifests, but I don't really know whether that's like a deliberate thing by Tony Scott. I'm not really sure, but you can see it when you watch it back. But cultural exports are really important to America, as they are to all nations. And so if America wants to find its standing back in the world and really get this kind of diplomatic soft power out there, what better way than Hollywood? It's like the most famous thing America has.
But I would say that, like, you know, massively kind of overtly masculine stuff is by its very nature quite homoerotic. So, like, if you dial up that, the other dial is going to go up as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people who aren't capable of thinking at any depth about this kind of fall foul of that, and they end up doing the opposite of what they intend, rightly or wrongly. I mean, it happened to Ron DeSantis last week, didn't it? It happened to Sesame Street fascist Ron DeSantis last week. He put like a promo video out of him how tough he was.
It was just like
a montage of him with all these different like muscly bodybuilders and stuff.
It's
so odd.
Interest promo video.
Yeah.
Oh, Buttigieg was just like, I mean, ignoring the fact that this was so gay.
He was like, I don't really know what to say, but that was really gay.
I don't know what to say, but that was really gay.
Yeah.